The 2016 African Investing for Impact Barometer shows that investments that combine financial returns with positive social, environmental and/or governance outcomes are flourishing on the continent. Secha Capital is one such player. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight I'm talking to a reformed consultant. His name is Brendan Mullen. He's Managing Director of Secha Capital, and Nombuso Nkambule, who's co-founder of the fund as well, to discuss how identifying long-term opportunities for improvement and growth can make all the difference. I'm kind about consultants, but you used to work for Bain. Did you also work for Bain?
No, I did not.
Did you? So you got a soul?
I debatable. I'm a doctor.
Yeah, a medical doctor?
Yes, I'm a medical doctor.
So why is a medical doctor going into funding businesses then? Can you do more good there than you can massaging a dying person's heart back to life?
I don't know about doing more good, but I'm living with somebody who is a former consultant and works in finance. I think your careers are bound to overlap. And that's how Sucha came into being, actually.
Okay, I mean, but this is there's a huge need. I mean, most people, Brendan, will tell us that there is no funding in South Africa for their brilliant ideas. Yet everybody I talk to who does funding says there's plenty of money. There just aren't enough good ideas in the country. I mean, what's your experience?
Sure. Thank you, Bruce. Just should make sure I mention that Bain & Company, where I used to work, is a great organization that helps multinationals.
Of course they are. They're wonderful.
They actually have been very supportive of Secha Capital by lending us some human capital talent to work at SMEs. So I'll get into
okay,
briefly.
we'll talk about that in just a second, because without the skills, the capital is often wasted. So let's get there in a moment.
Sure. To address your first question, Secha Capital was designed to solve for the missing middle and also management gap. So we are an impact investment private equity firm where we take very operational roles. And that is what is required to grow these SMEs. Yes, to get them funding, that missing middle, it's often difficult to get funding that is cheap or free of earmarks. So I really do believe that at the earlier stage, DFIs, government organizations, are doing a pretty good job. But it's when you're kind of at that inflection point for growth, that's when you need an injection of capital, but also human capital. And that's where we come in.
It's so often the case when entrepreneurs started a business and they're successful beyond their wildest dreams, and they get to R1 million in turnover, and they can't believe that all the religious holidays they've ever celebrated are happening all at once. And they manage and they scale up and they get to say 10 million. I don't know what the magic number is. 10 million? Is 10 million a good number? Where suddenly it becomes big for a small business. What happens next? I mean, they come to you and say, I need money to grow. And I need help to grow, I suspect.
So just going off what Brendan said is that we are very big operationally. So we don't just finance companies. I think operation is a very key term for us. So you come to us and we work alongside the middle management, and we actually help the company to grow because the companies are missing a management level. So we come in there, help them with management, and then we work side by side with them and then help that 10 million maybe grow to hopefully 100 million.
But how does that relationship work? Does it become a long-term relationship? Is it the consultant relationship where somebody comes in for a period of 3, 6, 12 months and then moves on to the next project? How does that work, Brendan?
Yeah, all good questions. Maybe I'll use the example of our first investment company, Native Child. So it's a natural hair care product for ethnic women. So it's in this niche growth vertical. And Santo Po has done amazing work. She's a founder, entrepreneur. She has grown this business, as we say, from 0 to 1. Right? So she has great product market fit. She's found this kind of niche growth audience that the multinationals don't know how to speak to. Now she's at the point where she's at that inflection point for growth, to go from 1 to 10. And some of the difficulties she's found is, for example, talking to Clicks and Discount. Do you know how much trade spend it costs to get on those shelves?
Sure.
That's not something that can be easily done at the SME level. And importantly for her, for Santo, she's wildly talented. She's done so much for Native Child, but she's one person. So it's very difficult to attract, pay for or develop that human capital talent. And that's where Secha comes in. And so what we bring is patience capital. So to answer your question, we are builders, not flippers. We're operators, not financiers. So we look for a long-term relationship to help build this company, both in terms of value, to build the next great African company, but also jobs in South Africa, because SMEs are the true catalyst for growth. And then when you say, what's the project like? We're very operationally focused for 9 months. We have an accelerator toolkit. And in parallel, we have a skills transfer playbook that we install, codify, and make repeatable. And then, of course, we pull back and take more classic board seats. So we're not leaving, but we're not there in the trenches day to day.
And what sort of stakes would you take? I mean, one watches Dragon's Den, for example, and you watch the dragons fighting over percentage points. I mean, whereabouts do you pitch yourselves?
Our percentages are between 10 and 30%.
How do you decide whether it should be 10 or whether it be 30?
It depends, I think, what the company is offering, and also more so what the company is willing to give up. Some companies will come to you in the beginning and say, I will want to stop at 10%. It's very difficult to fight with somebody that's their baby. We want to make it our baby by working together. So we don't want to go too high if the person is not willing to give us more. But I think our expertise, what we bring to the table, allows us to negotiate, you know, somewhere between that space.
All right. So you take a stake in the business. You then have an active interest. You provide some funding for this business, and you get your payback how? Ultimately, when you sell.
Selling is one opportunity. So in the classic private equity model, yes, it's usually a listing on the JSE, where we are today, or it's a strategic acquisition. So we are focused in FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, and agribusiness. Now those are kind of unsexy sectors that most larger private equity firms are ignoring these days, but there's actually the greatest kind of analogs and precedents for strategic acquisitions. So we think there's that. But it's also, again, patient capital. We're not looking for money back in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Down the line, if there's a listing, great. But there can also be dividends pulled out, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to get that capital back to the investors with the patience of growing that company to full potential and creating jobs in the interim.
Okay, how many companies have you funded so far?
We are on our first investment so far.
Oh, first investment. That is
investment.
Excellent. Okay, and what's the pipeline look like then?
I think the pipeline is looking promising. We have two...
Oh, that's you're not even the consultant.
I'm not the consultant, but like you said, I'm a very optimistic person. We've got 2 more in the pipeline that we are looking at, we're evaluating, but currently we're on our very first investment.
How many frogs have you kissed?
So, I understand your question, but actually, we do track that, but I really think it's finding the right fit. Secha Capital.
But typically, guys like yourselves will go and you'll see 100 companies, and maybe you'll choose one.
Yep.
I mean, and that's the sort of hit rate that one might expect, and that's pretty.
But it's important to note that at Secha, we're not taking product risk. We're not taking tech risk. We like these boring companies that they just need help executing and scaling. So it's not so much is this company going to be a good company someday, it's can we work together? Is there a clear opportunity for us to add value? Because we don't want to invest in a company that doesn't need us. So you ask about the pipeline, yeah, I would agree. It's robust. We're hoping to close the deal in the biltong vertical, the red meat value chain.
I've never heard of biltong being, biltong is a vertical, I suppose, as it dries. But
in my house it is. It's right to the table.
You're from Canada, right?
You would think about the accent from Boston.
From Boston, which is close to Canada.
Yeah,
exactly. You see, you're close to Canada. But what brings you to a place like South Africa where you could take your skills, which are developed at the cutting edge of private equity in the consulting world, to come to South Africa to invest in not the world's most competitive currency, in an exciting market nonetheless, but you could make more money elsewhere. Did you make enough as a consultant to do charity work?
What I think we're focused on is the opportunity for impact in South Africa. So yeah, I do come from the United States, and I worked at hedge funds, I worked in impact investing there, but I think this market is unique for its upside potential. We have very mature markets, but we also have, basically it's a bifurcated market of traditional trade and modern trade. And I think there's a growing population segment that is interested in new products, of getting better ways of integrating along the agricultural value chain. And also, just to succinctly answer your question, I fell in love with my wife and also with South Africa. So I'm long-term here. I think it's a great place to live, and I think Americans could learn a lot about how business is done in South Africa.
Again, that is open to interpretation. So, I mean, we have some ethical business practices. We've got some of the best governance guidelines in the world, and we've got some very shady operators in our part of the world. But when it comes to your motivation, then, to make a difference in this country, maybe even on the broader continent, I mean, giving up medicine, giving up a profession to that extent, to focus on what is essentially a dream.
I'm not sure if I'll give up my profession. I'm very passionate about medicine and helping people, saving lives. But I will say that I'm very motivated and inspired to work in this sector because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mother is an SME. She was in the SME industry. She's got a business.
When you're funding her?
Always.
Yeah, always.
We'd best if she would take it.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up in that environment, and it was just really inspiring to see job creation. But I think more practically, to be able to see your supporter home. And that's what I want to see. It's about creating jobs for everybody, but financial returns are very, very important.
How useful is the Department of Small Business? I mean, we've got the government department. It's more than 2 years old. I'm yet to be convinced. Are you convinced that it is making a positive impact?
I'd like to be. I just think the issue perhaps sometimes, often as you say, is governance and red tape. So perhaps that might be holding people back from doing what they'd like to do because, you've got to check certain boxes, fulfill certain criteria before you move forward. So I think if the issue of red tape can be taken care of, perhaps the departments, might be more useful in uplifting these businesses.
Just that.
Yeah,
if it achieves just that, pick a turnover number, say no red tape below that number, off you go, get people started at least, and then at least they're on the radar for possible funding.
Yeah, I agree. And if I could just add on, we're very proud of the innovative model for Secha Capital, and we think that its private capital component is a great way to go. But it takes a lot of different ways of attacking this problem. So there's a large spectrum of people doing great work in this industry, and this is where kind of our domain expertise fits. This is what we're passionate about. So the Department of Small Business, Jobs Fund, the people out there, like a Way2 Group or Edge Growth, they're all doing great things. What we're doing is we scale for depth, not for breadth, right? So we invest in fewer companies, but have a larger impact for each one.
Impact Investing, Nombuso Nkambule, who's co-founder of Secha Capital, and Brendan Mullen, managing director of Secha Capital as well. Sounds Canadian, but he's from Boston. Until next time, thank you very much for watching this evening, and look at opportunities to make a difference. That's what these guys are doing, and it's taking the starfish principle, one business at a time, and making that business make a difference. Till next time, bye-bye.